What's going on, guys? Pete Nova here with the Faceoff Sports Network. Today, we are going to do a little bit of a different show. We're going to have this become a reoccurring thing week by week, and it's going to be Dynasty Startup ADP Movers and Shakers. If you're familiar with our redraft show last year, me, Anthony, Hoff, and Steve did a redraft ADP stock up, stock down every single week. We're going to start doing that during this Dynasty offseason, and then obviously that redraft one will come back once we start to kind of get into the hot and heavy of the offseason. I am joined by my two partners, Anthony Servino and Matt Robbins of the FF Mediators. Fellas, you ready to just jump right into this?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it.
All right. So first guy on the board that we want to talk about today is going to be Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley had a tremendous year last year. And when taking a look at his ADP in Startup Dynasty right now, over the last 21 days, Saquon Barkley has moved a little bit back right now, 4 spots from the 208 to the 212. 27 years old, coming off of a Super Bowl win with the Philadelphia Eagles, and just got a contract extension fresh this offseason. So looks like he's going to be there for a decent amount of time, possibly even to end his career. So yeah, I mean, not a ton of movement for Saquon Barkley, but a very large name right now that a lot of people are eyeing as their startups are getting going. Anthony, your thoughts on Saquon Barkley and Dynasty startups right now?
Yeah, right now, Saquon, where he's going in startups, I'm perfectly fine with. He's 28 years old. He just recently turned 28, so he'll be 28 throughout this upcoming season. And if you look back, and I think we talked about this with CMC, Saquon, CMC, these guys missed so much time early in their career where it's almost like that's a little bit less wear and tear. Yes, we do have to worry about the injury concern. He played 16 last year, 14 the year before that, but he has some chunk games missed earlier. Playing behind this Eagles offensive line and Jalen Hurts and their skill players on the outside, I feel like that adds a little bit longevity to somebody like Saquon Barkley, like it did for CMC before last year, like it did last year for Derrick Henry. So if I'm drafting Saquon in a startup, I'm assuming I'm going to get at least 2 more, I would say, elite seasons out of Saquon Barkley, barring like a non-contact injury.
Yeah, no. I mean, Saquon is a very valuable dynasty asset right now. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Anthony's right there. You know, if we've noticed anything this past season was the veteran running back still has value. We see Derrick Henry, he's still playing at an extremely high level, and he's 31. So assuming you can get 2+ years from Saquon and the Eagles offense, to me, is a great assumption. I think you should operate under that. When you're picking him at the 212, though, in a startup draft, that's a pretty high expense. That's a big investment you're making for your team, and you kind of got to play the board. My only concern with drafting Saquon that high is just, do you miss out on the quarterback play? Now, assuming you're picking 101, 102, 103, you're probably walking away with a pretty heavy hitter at quarterback. And if you get Saquon on the way back, you know, then you got to make the decision. Are you going to get that guaranteed second quarterback? Or are you going to go with a wide receiver? So there's a lot of roster construction that goes in with drafting Saquon because you're immediately committing to being a win-now team. So it's one that I really, really try to make that conscious decision whenever I am selecting Saquon, just because it's such an impact on your future of your dynasty roster.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Barkley's statistics in 2024, right, coming off of 205 yards, 5.8 yards per carry, 15 total touchdowns. One thing I worry about is you could look at this 2 ways. Does he regress on rushing yards and touchdowns, but maybe, you know, start to uptick a little bit on receptions, right? 33 receptions is the lowest amount of receptions he's had in his career outside of 2020, where he played just 2 games. So do we see that start to kind of climb back up? No Kenneth Kenneth Gainwell no longer there, who is somebody who eats a little bit into those receptions. But taking a look at Saquon Barkley and some players going around him right now, at the running back position, Devon Achane is going at pick 30, Breece Hall pick 34, so a full round behind him. And then you have Bucky Irving and then Jonathan Taylor somewhere around that same area at the moment. I think for me, Saquon Barkley is an asset that you're drafting if you're committing to, saying I am going all in and I'm going to try to compete early on. Especially with drafting veteran running backs like in Dynasty startups, you need to have that mindset if you're taking a guy at his age, because look, at rushing 2,000 yards and having 345 attempts, not including a long Super Bowl run, is a lot for a guy that we've seen historically miss games in his career, and he's aging, right? So I think for me, it's all going to depend on roster construction. But if I was shooting for somewhere in the middle where trying to build young at the same time, making yourself competitive enough, I think I'd be eyeing more of a cornerstone wide receiver piece in that round, like a Ladd McConkey maybe, or, a Marvin Harrison Jr. or Drake London, who are going, a couple spots behind him. So that would be my thoughts there. But yeah, I mean, Saquon Barkley, like I said, is a good asset to own. Our next player that we do want to talk about here is going to be DK Metcalf. A lot of talk about DK Metcalf, right, over the last month. Is he going to get traded? When Geno Smith was moved, DK Metcalf was going at the 701 in Dynasty startups. We've seen him fall back pretty much an entire round. He's going at the 712, and he's 26 years old. Is the movement due to landing spot? Is it due to, people just coming off of Metcalf? Maybe a little bit of both, but I wouldn't be surprised if that ADP starts to move back up just a little bit, and maybe meet somewhere in the middle between 701 and 712 if Aaron Rodgers does in fact sign, or Russell Wilson to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Matt, your thoughts on DK Metcalf at this Dynup startup price, and do you see him moving up or down in the near future?
To be honest, man, I think it's probably going to go down a little bit. You see, he's tied right next to George Pickens, and a lot of this just has to do with who's going to be the quarterback. You already mentioned it, so there's question marks there, and how this Pittsburgh offense is going to kind of re-identify itself in a totally different way that we've not really been used to. Najee's now gone. We've got DK, and we've got Pickens. Freiermuth is still there, but we don't have a quarterback. And, him falling to the 710, I struggle to find myself in situations where I want to select DK and add him to my team just because of the issues of what he's been in his career. He's a good player, but it's not necessarily correlated to elite fantasy upside, especially the last few years. I mean, we're 3 years removed from when he was actually a top 20 wide receiver, when he was in 2022, when he finished at 16. So I just think that, the wish and hope that DK can be this big time top 12 threat is kind of gone. And I don't expect that to get resurrected in Pittsburgh. If anything, I expect more of the same or worse.
Yeah. Anthony, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you here. And if you remember last year, Pete, we were on shows together, and I was taking JSN over DK Metcalf. I've been year by year out on DK. And the reason why, I feel like people are chasing, what year was it, when DK Metcalf had that big year?
2020.
2020. Ever since then, he had 1 year. He followed it up with 12 touchdowns, 1,300 yards. He hasn't come close to that. 2023, he had 1,100. So people are chasing that. And sure, that's his ceiling. But I feel like, year after year, we're trying to draft DK Metcalf at his ceiling, and he's underperforming. Now you go to Pittsburgh. I don't know who their quarterback is. And even if it is Aaron Rodgers, it is still an Arthur Smith offense, and the wide receiver they have in George Pickens, he's younger than DK Metcalf, and they both do the same thing. DK Metcalf's a little bit bigger. They're both the same height. They have similar skill sets. So, I just think and I love George Pickens. I'm not sure how much George Pickens are going to have. I think these two guys cannibalize each other. So, yeah, they can bring in Cousins. They can bring in Aaron Rodgers. They still have to deal with Arthur Smith. And I think Pittsburgh is one of those teams we're talking about off air. Hey, who's going to draft a running back? I think Pittsburgh, get to have Jalen Warren. I think they're addressing this running back position, whether it's somebody like Dobbins or Nick Chubb, or they spend a high pick in the draft. So
Yeah.
I think this, we're going to get that Arthur Smith run first offense, and
I wouldn't be surprised if they do add a player in the draft. I think with DK Metcalf, it's tough, right? Because when you look at how he was to start the year out of the gate, he versed a tough matchup against Patrick Surtain in week 1, only 29 receiving yards. He then tears off 3 straight weeks with 129, 104, and 104 against Christian Gonzalez, who he caught 10 catches against. He caught 4 catches for 104 against Jalen Ramsey. And then Carlton Davis against Detroit, he caught 7 catches for 104. And then he kind of goes on a little bit of a 2-game slide, 55, 48, 4 catches, 3 catches. A lot of targets, 11 targets in some of those games. And then he had 99. And then we really didn't see him have a game above 70 receiving yards after week 11, the rest of the year. I think that's a testament a little bit about this Seattle offense, who, if you watch my videos with defense, I think this offense just really inefficient, right? They struggled to move the football and move effectively down the field. And I think that, DK also got injured in that Atlanta game, if you remember that, right? And that was the last game that he had over 70 yards. He never came back the same. He missed a few games after. So I think that definitely played a part in it. But when looking at DK Metcalf, taking a look at some guys around him, you have Jalen Waddle, Jamison Williams, Tyreek Hill, George Pickens, Brandon Ayuk, Jerry Jeudy, Mike Evans. If I am in this area of wide receivers right now, unless like Terry McLaurin or even DJ Moore, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, or Chris Olave fall to me there, if DK Metcalf is the best guy on the board outside of Waddle, Jamison Williams, Tyreek Hill, George Pickens, Brandon Ayuk, Jerry Jeudy, I think I'm going to take Jamison Williams, or I'm going to look to target another position. Unless, again, maybe I have 2 really strong wide receivers and I'm banking on DK maybe, returning to form, and you can accept that kind of risk, but understanding that there's a strong possibility that he's going to be a high-end wide receiver too, a mid wide receiver too, right? And if you have 2 strong wide receivers, you're willing to take that gamble. But before moving on to our next player, I did want to pull up 2 questions that we had in the chat. Joshua said, "What's up, guys? Would you move Jake Ferguson for? What would you move Jake Ferguson for in a tight end premium?" I think I'm going to defer to Matt on this one, and then Anthony can give his perspective. Matt, if you're moving Ferguson right now, what are you thinking? Is he worth a first rounder at this point, and maybe in a tight end premium, or is he probably more in that mid round 2?
I think if you can get an early 3rd round pick, that would probably be lucky, in my opinion.
Wow.
The market for Jake Ferguson's just not going to be very high. I mean, it is a tight end premium league, so you can make that argument, but the names that are coming in with this class are just going to push him down. I mean, Tyler Warren, Loveland, and you could argue whichever one of the guy goes 3rd is probably going to be higher than Jake Ferguson immediately. And so I think you're just looking to get a 3rd round pick, and I would do that. I would be looking to move Ferguson for almost any 3rd if I could, especially if I don't need him, or maybe even try and up tier and, do Jake Ferguson and a 4th or some bench player I don't care about. Maybe go get a guy a little bit higher with like David Njoku or Evan Engram or someone like that, just to bolster my roster.
Okay. Anthony, I'm going to go to you, and then I have some recent trades that have gone down with Ferguson that I can go through a little bit here, but your thoughts on that?
I'd be willing to pay a little bit more than a 3rd for Jake Ferguson, maybe a late 2nd round. The reason why, if we look at 2023, that was when Dallas's offense was clicking. Dak was healthy. Ferguson was healthy. He caught 71 for 102 targets, 10.4 fantasy points per game. That's not tight end premium, but that's where he was. He was 10th in that category. Last year, he was banged up. Dak missed a lot of time. The Dallas offense didn't look good. We have to look at right now. Dallas's offense, who is Dak throwing the football to when it comes to pass catchers? Brandon Cooks, they didn't bring him back, and I don't know if they will. That wide receiver 2 and 3 spot is full of question marks. Right now, it looks like Lamb, Jonathan Mingo, Tolbert. Jake Ferguson's probably going to be number 2 in targets unless they go and add a marquee player in the draft, and they can. but this is also a team that just lost Zach Martin. They're rebuilding their offensive line. And I think that, they lost DeMarcus Lawrence. They need edge rushers. So they need a lot of help. And I don't know if they can go pull in a luxury player like a wide receiver, especially with the holes in the backfield. I get that they brought in Javonte and Miles Sanders. They just have so many other needs. So a person like Jake Ferguson is so valuable to Dak Prescott that I'd be willing to take a gamble that they don't do a lot to upgrade that wide receiver room. And Ferguson and Dak, if they're both healthy together, this guy can catch 90 passes this year.
Yeah. I think for me, the only thing is, they do have some younger guys behind him at the position, Schoonmaker, right, who they invested in. I think I would want to wait and see before I trade for Ferguson to see what they do to their core players, right? I have mocked them to take a wide receiver in the first at times. I've even done running back, right? Matthew Golden is a hot name possibly to go there at 12. So that's my worry, right? And you could probably get Ferguson at even more of a discount, where if they don't bring somebody in, you're probably not paying much more for Ferguson after the draft than you are probably today. Some recent trades for Ferguson that have gone down per Dynasty Data Lab: Ferguson for a 2026 second, Ferguson for Mark Andrews straight up, which
Wow.
I don't know that I would do that, but that's somebody that must be pretty low on Mark Andrews at this point. Jake Ferguson in a 2025 fifth for Cooper Kupp. And then this one's kind of interesting. Jake Ferguson for Luke Musgrave and a 2025 second rounder in a PPR league, no tight end premium. So I think, Matt, you might be slightly lower, but that's fine. I think we're probably somewhere at that 210 to 212 for Ferguson. It might be where his value is currently, especially in a premium, where his value is not really yards after catch as much as it is his ability to get a solid target share and get a lot of receptions, right? I think that's where he brings that value. And moving on here to two other questions, and then we'll get back to the other players that we have. And if you guys have questions, feel free to keep sending them in. St. Louis fans, Mr. Discount said, I am strong at running back and a little bit weak at wide receiver. Who would you move Breece Hall or Devon Achane for? What would we pick in Dynasty? So, Devon Achane and Breece Hall, and Matt, you can probably chime in here the best. Devon Achane right now is got to be valued at a 101, in my opinion, at least bare minimum. Breece Hall, maybe around the 102. You can sell me on that 102 if you're looking to upgrade Omarion Hampton. If you told me Omarion Hampton gets a good landing spot and you're trading Breece Hall for him straight up, I'd be okay with that. Right? You're kind of re-rolling the dice on a running back that I think could have longevity. Now, I know you're not as high on a Hampton as maybe I am and some other people are, but is that some kind of fair value? I don't know. It would really depend on what he's looking for, because I don't know if you're moving a guy like Achane, who's a young cornerstone piece at running back, but it would depend where you are at wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm interested in what he means by strong at running back. If those are your two best, then who's your third best? I'd be curious how much damage you're going to do. Mm-hmm. If I'm moving one, I'm going to move Hall over Achane. That's just my opinion. I like Achane more. Moving Hall, I think you're spot on. Achane's probably the 101, maybe the 102. I think you could probably get the 102 and maybe an early second for Breece Hall. You're going to have to do a little bit of negotiating and, really sell that he's an elite running back. And I don't hate that move at all, because you can use that 102 to do all sorts of things, whether it's drafting a wide receiver, because you say you need a wide receiver, and, use that second pick to take another shot. If I'm moving Breece Hall straight up for another wide receiver, I'd be looking at names like A.J. Brown or JSN, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, and maybe a little bit of extra on top. And I like all those moves. So don't be too afraid to make that big time move, but I would certainly be interested to know what the rest of that running back room looks like.
Okay. Anthony, any thoughts there for you? If you were moving one of these guys, which one would it be?
Wow. I would probably hold on to Devin Achan. I'm more of an Achan guy. I love Brees, and I do think this Jets offense moving forward is going to run through Brees Hall. But I feel like we already know what we're going to get out of Devin Achan in this offense. And with a healthy Tua, you got to remember in games that Tua played last year, I think Achan averaged over 7 targets a game when they were on the field together. The opposing defensive coordinators, they were taking away the big play from Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And that's why we see Jonnu Smith pop. That's why we saw Devin Achan pop. And he was heavily utilized. He almost reminded me of those early Alvin Kamara years, the way they were using him as a receiver out of the backfield.
Yeah, I think if I was going to move one, I would just want to move whichever one gives me the most value. I think there's both risk for both guys. Both guys have had injury issues in the past. Brees Hall has had more serious injury issues. A-Chain's actually stayed pretty healthy last year. So I would just want to move whichever guy gets me the most value at that point, because they're both pretty similar in value. A-Chain is a little bit younger, right? Compared to Brees Hall. Similar trades that A-Chain's been involved in here is, a 2025 first rounder, a 2027 first rounder. So 2 firsts. That's in a 12-team, 1 PPR. I'm also seeing here A-Chain for a 2025 first and a 2025 second as well. So, I mean, it seems like you could how high are those firsts, right? I would be comfortable if you can't get, a 102 and a 101 for A-Chain. The farthest back I'd go is a 104, 105, but I would need a player back, right? So maybe tiering down. If you're good at the running back room, maybe you get like a 104, 105, and you pick up like a Jameson Williams if you're high on him, right? Or, a Ricky Pearsall and maybe add a second rounder, right? A late second or a third even thrown on top, where it's A-Chain to 105 and Pearsall, right? Like if you're high on Pearsall. So those are the kinds of moves that I'd be looking for, but you can't really move. If you're going to do a 1-for-1 for a pick, you got to get at least a 101 or a 102 for A-Chain. And you got to feel really confident in the player that you're taking in the rookie draft, or maybe you move back and accumulate even more picks, right? Which is always a possibility as well. Paul coming in here, and then we'll get to our next players unless there's another question. Paul said, "Hey guys, in a 1 quarterback, would you rather have the 211 or both the 302 and the 309?" I'd rather have the 311. In a 1 quarterback league, to me, I want the higher picks. I don't want more picks. I want higher picks because I'm assuming this isn't a super flex. And so if it's not a super flex, like I don't care about depth as much. And so give me the more premium picks. Now I understand it's not much of a drop off from 211 to 302. So really, to me, it would just depend on where you tier your players. Is there a tier drop from the 211 to the 302? Is there a tier break right there? And if not, if you have, 211 and 302, if you have a couple guys clumped together that you feel similar about, then I'm fine with the 302 and the 309. But generally speaking, I would say I prefer the 211 if it's a 1 quarterback non-super flex. Matt, Anthony, anything there?
Yeah, I'll go the other side, actually. This is the most coach trade of all time. He notoriously moves second-round picks for 2/3, so it just makes me laugh a little bit. But, yeah, in my opinion, in a 1 quarterback at the 211, you're probably missing out on most of the people that I would want.
Sure.
I love the 207 to the 210 to 211 in super flex drafts, but in 1 QB, that's going to shift forward, not back.
Yep.
So I'm probably missing out on just about everybody that I'm really comfortable with at that pick. So I might as well take 2 swings at it with the 302 and the 309 and get 2 guys in that kind of next grouping, in my opinion. So I'm comfortable with that trade, but you're kind of splitting hairs.
No, that's a pretty fair viewpoint. Anthony, anything else to add?
I kind of feel the same way. I'd rather have the 230s or the early third round pick is not too far back, and then you're still getting a later third round pick. After the first round or even the top 15 picks, I feel like these are all dart throws anyway.
Yeah, to me, it's about your conviction, right? Like if you feel confident that there's a guy that will be there at the 211 and not there at the 302, then then go with your gut, because they're dart throws either way. If you feel really strong about a player, I'd rather take a guy that I feel strong about than take 2 dart throws at guys that I'm kind of so, but we're at the back end of the draft, so you're just taking swings. There's swings regardless, right? But it would just depend on, where your level of comfortability is, and if you have conviction for those players. Moving on to our next player here, it's going to be Jalen McMillan. This is a guy that had a really strong stretch to the end of the year last year. When taking a look at his ADP, right, he's moved. He was 809 at the start of the month, and is now almost a full round drop, right? He's sitting at the 906 right now, 23 years old. And this was a guy that really started to pick up steam, out of Washington, was a rookie last year, and he's sitting behind 2 older veterans who have had issues staying healthy. We saw it last year. That's a big reason why McMillan was thrusted into this role. But Chris Godwin is back, right? So I think that probably affected a little bit of his ADP startup value here. But Anthony, thoughts on Jalen McMillan and where he's being currently drafted at the moment?
Yeah, McMillan was one of my favorite receivers coming out. I did like the landing spot. But the issue is they have Evans and Godwin in front of him. Now, McMillan did have his chance. If you remember the trajectory on McMillan early, when both Evans and Godwin were sidelined, McMillan didn't fare very well. He kind of struggled until Mike Evans came back, and then he was like number 2, and we saw McMillan put up some big-time numbers down the stretch. I don't know if he's ready to be a 1. I don't know if he'll ever be a 1, but when you have Evans and Godwin both have some injury history, like you said, and at some point, Mike Evans is going to take a step back and retire. This should be Jalen McMillan's wide receiver from a dynasty point of view. Yeah, you'll get probably a couple of games of usage out of him, just because at some point, I do think one or both of the veterans will miss time. But you have to look ahead here. I think this is a good buy low window on Jalen McMillan, because eventually he's going to be a starter in 2 wide sets on this offense.
Matt,
before you go, like the other wide receivers outside of McMillan, like Palmer, he's had a few years of opportunity. He hasn't done anything. Sterling Shepard, he's getting older. Raheem Jarrett, he had some opportunity last year, didn't really do anything. This is really Jalen McMillan's job as the 3 and to move up when these other veterans get hurt.
Yeah, I would think, and I'll let you go, Matt. I would think if they draft another wide receiver in the first 2 days, I think that would tell us all we need to know about their thoughts on McMillan, right? After a year of having him in the room. I don't see that happening, but we'll see if they do bring another person, because again, Godwin and Evans are getting a little older, but Godwin did just get that extension. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think everything Anthony just said, there's a lot of merit to it. Of both Godwin and Evans are aging. Yes, Godwin's on the new contract, but they're going to need another guy to step up. And we've already seen McMillan do it once. And he's right. I mean, you're placing a bet if you go and get him now, because if he does explode and he plays well this season and Mike Evans moves on, he's probably going to be way more expensive than he is right now. But you do run the risk of, if you look at the other names that are around him, especially the pick value associated with his name right now, it's tough for me to draft him. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure that I would take McMillan over Reed or over Josh Downs or over even Keon. And I don't even really like Keon, to be honest. So it's tough for me to really pull the name on Jalen McMillan right now, unless you can find someone that is down on him. So if you can capitalize off somebody seeing Evans being back, Godwin re-signing, then I would absolutely do it. Like Anthony said, you go get him now, and then you can have him for later. But at his true ADP value, I struggle to draft that unless I'm kind of building a retool or 1-year rebuild team.
Yeah, I think with Jalen McMillan, 13th in total touchdowns last year. He also, I mean, you don't want to take things away from guys, but he went on a crazy stretch of touchdowns, right? He had 2 touchdowns, 1, 2, 1. I mean, he went on a 5-game stretch where he had a touchdown, and he scored all of his touchdowns outside of one in the first week of the season. He scored all of his touchdowns in a 5-week stretch. And that was when Mike Evans was there, to Anthony's point, right? You know, if Evans has issues staying healthy, where does Jalen McMillan's role move? If Evans is off the field and it's McMillan and Godwin, how does that affect McMillan, right? Where Godwin's playing that power slot role, McMillan's playing on the outside. We've seen McMillan have struggles, you know, being effective. I don't know. I'd have to look where McMillan's slot snaps were last year. I don't know if he did slot into more of Chris Godwin's role, but I don't think
136, not a lot. 21.7% rate.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Anthony in that, you know, Mike Evans really pulled a lot of attention. And I like Jalen McMillan. I do. And it's not necessarily, I think he is a good dynasty asset to have. But I think to Matt's point, you have guys going around him. Like, I'd honestly rather take a chance on Ricky Pearsall, who had a really good
round is he going
last year. Jalen McMillan's going in round 9 right now. 9th round. So players going around Jalen McMillan, you have the 112 in Dynasty Startup. So the last first round pick in this year's rookie draft is going right in front of Jalen McMillan. Chris Godwin is going 3 spots ahead of him. David Montgomery, Tyron Tracy. I think I'd rather take a chance on McMillan over at least Tracy. Maybe I'd rather Montgomery depending on team build. But yeah, I mean, and then ironically, Mike Evans is right there with them as well. They're all kind of clustered together at this moment.
I kind of feel like I would have to have my starting receivers locked and loaded. Yeah. And then at that point, in the 9th round, look with the board. Hey, there's some running backs I like in the 10th round. I can take this gamble on McMillan for depth and maybe for the future, and then go grab a running back I like in round 10.
Yeah, if he's your third.
Those starting spots locked up.
Second receiver, it's tough. Like, I mean, it depends on your team build, right? But like, I'd rather grab Cortland Sutton at this point in time if he's going to be your wide receiver too, right? Like I'd rather go grab Sutton. I'd rather McMillan over Shakir just because I think Shakir's ceiling is tapped, and we've seen, you know, what Shakir can do with not a lot of talent around him, and he is what he is. I like Khalil Shakir. So. Any other things you want to add there, Matt, before we move on?
Yeah, you know, you mentioned the 2 picks where he's just sandwiched between the 112 and the 201. I don't know how you wouldn't take those over him. If I'm stuck between those and you told me I could get, you know, a Matthew Golden or, you know, maybe a Loveland and a tight end premium, like, I don't know. I would much rather have those picks than Jalen McMillan, because I don't think he'll return to that value. You know, you're basically betting on his best case scenario with where his ADP is.
Yeah, I mean, for perspective, in terms of when you look at trades here, McMillan's been involved in, you have a 2025 second, a 2027 third with McMillan. So just McMillan for straight up for those picks. I don't know how high those seconds are, and that third is, but it's also a third in 2027. And then you have McMillan for a 2025 second and a 2025 fifth, right? Those are the only picks in here that are straight up trades. And then you have McMillan for a 2027 first. So if we're talking a 2027 first and I can get the 112 first instead of McMillan, I think it's a pretty easy sell to me. And draft picks at this time of year, they only increase in value, especially rookie picks, right? Like it even if the 112 is 1 pick ahead of the 201, psychologically people see a first round pick and they value it much more just because it's a first round pick, right? So I think I'd rather the first for sure. Let's get to a question here from Greg, and then Jamie Angel. I see you there too. I'll grab you. You're over on Twitter. I'm just going to grab our YouTube comments here first. Greg said, I'm pretty low key this time of year. Do you guys think now is a good time to make trades, or do you prefer to wait a little after the rookie draft? So much uncertainty. I would say, generally speaking, I don't want to make trades for veteran running backs. Unless you're really getting a really good discount and you're really thin at the position, then I'm more comfortable. Like if you can get a Joe Mixon for, you know, really cheap, Like, sure, but like his Joe Mixon's startup value is between a 110 and a 112. I'm not giving up a late first for Joe Mixon until I see that they don't add somebody to that room until the rookie draft is over. So I feel like I don't know how you guys approach it, but I think veteran running backs are a big no-no for me unless I'm really thin there and I'm getting a real big discount. I'm okay trading for wide receivers a little bit more because more than one guy can be on the field at one time, whereas running backs, you're really talking about workload splits where receivers talent usually wins out. And if a guy is talented, he'll command the football more. Anything?
Yeah. I completely agree with you there. If I'm making a trade, I'm not going to go get a veteran running back. And to be fair, I'm not even going to go for a running back at all unless I know it's an established name like Barkley or Bucky Irving or Gibbs or Bijan. Whoever it is, they've got to be the guy. I'm not going to go make a trade and add in, Chuba Hubbard or Isaiah Pacheco. Like all these guys could be replaced. This is such a deep running back class. You just got to expect the unexpected. So I'm not going to make that bet now until the draft tells me, okay, now you can go buy them.
Sure.
Is it a good time to trade? Yeah, because like Pete said, these picks are only going to get more valuable. The 112 is going to be worth gold when you're on the clock. Everyone wants it. So I would be looking to add picks, but I always play in tiers. So if in my mind I know that I'm super comfortable with the first 7 players of the draft, then I'm going to go get the 107. If I know that I'm perfectly fine with having him on my team, I go to that last pick in that tier, whichever one I can get to that's the cheapest. So you just got to know your league and know your league mates and kind of find the best deal for you.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Greg. And then just one more question here, and we'll move on. Jamie, not sure if you're still here. He said, I have a 101 and the 102 is Genty, and I don't know if Tet Hampton or Warren. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're taking Warren that high. If you are, then you should probably trade back at the 102 and try to recoup some value there because Warren probably shouldn't be going in the top 3. I think it's a Genty in his own tier right now at this point, and then the second tier is likely Tet, Cam Ward, and probably Omar and Hampton, unless there's a surprise running back that goes ahead of Hampton in the first round, like maybe Trevion Henderson slips in there. Maybe you can make the argument there or put him in that tier. But I think Warren's probably likely going at that 105 to 107 range. So I think it depends on your roster build. I would say Cam Ward is the pick there at the 102 if you need a quarterback. I think that's fine. You guys?
Go ahead, Anthony. You got anything?
I mean, is this draft before or after the NFL drafts? I think landing spot to me matters more so to most. I don't like doing my rookie draft until after I know landing spots.
It's terrible way to do it.
Yeah, well, that's how I prefer to do it.
Yeah. I hate when people do. I can't stand being in leagues that people want you to trade before the rookie draft. I just don't want to be in leagues like that. I mean, I get it. Some people will say, it's kind of like drafting best ball in like February. I get it. But Dynasty is permanent and has longer term repercussions where best ball, you can draft 900 lineups and take chances. Dynasty, I don't want to take impacting moves on my team until I know landing.
Like what if Hampton is the better talent and Henderson gets drafted to a marquee situation?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden this question's completely flipped.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm kind of with you there. Matt, anything else before we move on?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is it's fine to just go ahead and label Genty the 101 because I think we're all kind of there.
Yeah.
But the 102, I'm not going to assign a name to it until we get the landing spot. Anthony's 100% right. The draft will tell us what we need to do. If there's 3 running backs drafted in the first round, now you got names to play with. You can pick the best landing spots. We just did a draft where I have the 101 and the 102, and I didn't draft a single running back that matters in our draft. So I'm just planning on taking the 2 best running backs with the 2 best landing spots.
I mean, was it 2 years ago? People were really high on Charbonnet, and he went to one of the worst landing spots you can go to. Last year was Benson going to the Cardinals with Connor.
Mm-hmm.
That can happen to any of these guys outside of probably Genty.
Well, and the worst thing is there. This is such a talented rookie class. It's going to disrupt a lot of running back rooms, and that's why I'm worried about trading for veterans, because unless you're a really well established guy right now in a good situation, like Chase Brown, for example. You love Chase Brown, Anthony. Matt and me have our concerns. I don't see a world where they don't bring somebody else in. I just don't. Right? Maybe they bring in Judkins, right? Like I could see
But
that,
they need
right?
defense.
An Ohio kid.
They need defense.
No, I know Judkins would probably be a round 2 guy or a round 3, and they got to go defense. But I just,
but the point is that they're not locked into that role. Like Tyrone Tracy, he was a guy I was buying everywhere last year. I drafted him at the 308, the 312, like what felt like 100 times. Now I'm selling him if I can, because I'm scared he's going to get replaced. This class is just so good.
Yeah, I agree, and I was with you too. I love Tyrone Tracy. He was one of my highest owned guys in best ball. But when you look at Tyrone Tracy's ADP right now, it's a perfect example, right? Cash in on what you made. You made out well. He either helped you make a push, to contending last season, or you were able to package him up and send him off to some sucker who was willing to pay. But right now he's sandwiched in the 111 to the 112, and you took him late 3rd round last year. So cash in on that value and just re-roll the dice. I'd rather re-roll the dice on one of these running backs in this class in the 1st round, if you can get it for Tracy, right, than to hold on to Tracy in a shitty offense and hope that they don't bring somebody else in to disrupt that offense. So, all right, let's move on here. One of my guys, right, Evan Engram joins my Denver Broncos. This is a guy who has jumped up a lot. He was originally at the 12-11 to begin the month. After landing in Denver, he has now moved up a full 2 rounds to the 10-12. 30 years old, right? So we're talking about an aging asset here, going to a new spot with Sean Payton, who's clearly – I want to add this before we move to Matt first. Clearly this was a Sean Payton telling this guy he is going to be his Joker. He sold him on his role in this offense because it was between the Denver Broncos and the Chargers, and it was pretty much that the contracts weren't much different, right? I mean, he was practically getting the same offer between 2 teams, and he chose Denver. I think a big reason as to why that would be is because of the role in that offense, where I think the Chargers want to be more ground and pound, right? And that's not as appealing as to Payton, who can find creative ways to get him the football. Matt, what are your thoughts on Evan Engram right now going at this 10th round cost?
Oh, I love it. I love it. If I could go get Evan Engram on my team, I would be trying to do it right now. I mean, you already mentioned the landing spot and being the Joker for Sean Payton. That's really valuable for me. I mean, we've seen tons of people be in that role over Payton's career and have a ton of fantasy upside and talent. And I think Evan Engram is just that. He's already proven he's a fantastic pass catcher. We've just seen it over his years in Jacksonville. Obviously, he had the great rookie season with the Giants, and then it kind of fell off. But the quarterback play in New York was terrible. And he even dealt with some of that issues in Jacksonville. But Bo Nix looks really promising. And what we know about Bo Nix is he's an on-time quarterback. He always is on schedule. He's great with his reads. He delivers the ball accurately and in the right spot. And I think that's where Evan Engram just fits as his best friend. The age, he just turned 30, but that doesn't really scare me at tight end. No. These guys play longer. If you go pull up a lot of lists of good tight ends playing into their 30s, there's a ton of them. He's not alone right now being a 30-year-old tight end. Kelsey's, he's almost 36, right? So he's got plenty of time. If you can get 2-3 years out of him in a tight end premium year, a tight end premium league, I'm absolutely all for that.
Anthony, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great spot for Evan Engram. You brought up the tight end longevity and his age. Evan Engram used to be an injury-prone player. If you go back early in his career, missed some time. Between 2020 and 2023, he missed 1 game. Last year, gets banged up, misses a bunch of time. I'm not really worried about the injuries as much because he has a 4-year span of proven durability. He goes to an offense that has a big-time need for a secondary, consistent pass catcher. The tight end room was I don't even know if mid's the right word last season. And what they have now, Troutman, Kroll, Adkins, and Thomas Yasmin behind him. This is Evan Ingram's role. I do think he can do, we know he can do a lot of different things, line up all over the formation. He's not just a typical inline tight end. And in this Sean Payton offense, I think he's going to get creative. So I'm all in on Evan Engram. And if you go back to 2023, remember Christian Kirk gets hurt. Jacksonville's offense was still competent. He had 143 targets. So we know he can handle a large target volume and also deliver. He was a tight end 4 in points per game at tight end. So, yeah, this is a great landing spot. And I think the 10th round is outstanding for Evan Engram.
Yeah. When you look at the targets, right? I mean, 2022, 98, 2023, 143. Let's round up 98 to 100 because why not? It's 2 targets off, right? In 4 years of his career, he's had over 100 targets, right? That's 50% of his, slightly under 50%. We're talking 40%, I think, or 45% of his career. He's had 100 targets, right? Like that's pretty impressive. And then obviously you look at it, he's not a guy that has scored a ton of touchdowns. If he can get with a creative play caller who can scheme end zone, I mean, that's even better. I mean, we're talking about a guy whose his career high was his rookie season where he scored 6 touchdowns. Outside of that, he's only scored a career high of 4, and that was the last 2 seasons in 2023 and 2022, if not counting last year because of the injuries and all that. But, he was tight end 4, tight end 7 with just 4 touchdowns, right? He has yards after catch ability, and he catches a ton of passes. And quite honestly, I think his cost is, I mean, it's too hard to pass up. When you look at the players going around him, you have Travis Kelce, who's valued higher than Evan Engram. What are you getting out of Travis Kelce? 1 year, possibly? And I think if Evan Engram and Kelce stay healthy this year, I think I'm comfortable saying Ingram's probably going to outscore him this year, right? Unless Kelce leaves it all out on the line this year and says, it's my last year, no load management, I'm just going all out. But outside of that, you have players like, okay, Isaiah Likely. I mean, Mark Andrews is still there. I don't think Likely, the way they move him around as a move tight end, is going to ever be a full-time guy on the field. You have Jonnu Smith, had a really good year. I just think for the age, like you guys said, at 30 years old, he probably has maybe 2 to 3 years left where he can give you, the ceiling of a 100 target year. I think he still has that in him, and he's going to arguably I'm not going to say it's the best offensive situation he's been in, but you can argue, I mean, he's coming from 2 train wrecks going to a stable offense with a coach that's just probably had one of the best coaching seasons he's ever had with what he was working with. And that offense is arguably better than where he was with Jacksonville and New York. So I'm all in at the cost. I think it's great value. And I don't know, Matt, it looked like you were going to chime in and say something. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, if we're playing Dynasty and we're playing in our windows, follow the money. He signed a 2-year deal in Denver. There you go. He's at least involved in the plan for 2 years. Now, certainly these teams can move on, but I think it says a lot that they signed him knowing everyone was thinking, okay, they might go get Loveland. They might go get Warren. Now I think it's more in play for them to, have Evan Engram and then draft a guy like Harold Fannin in the 3rd or 4th round and use him as a H-back and kind of let him develop that Joker role.
Yeah. I mean, since 2020 up to last year because he missed a bunch of games, he was top 5 receiver in slot snaps, and then he had back-to-back years in 2022 and 23 in Jacksonville, where he was a number 1 tight end in slot snap. So I do think Sean Payton, I could see him using him in a similar fashion in Denver.
Yeah. And Greg makes a good point too. Like I'm all for trading for cheap older tight ends, especially if you could throw 3rd round picks at them in the rookie draft. I think you can get a lot of guys for those kinds of offers, high 3rd round pick in the rookie draft. Like if you're in a competing window, right? I think that's obviously the key. You have to understand your roster and your team. I'm not picking Evan Engram if you're hypothetically in a startup, which we all just completed one together, and you're like, yeah, this is not a team that's competing right now. Sure, I can understand not taking Evan Engram if you have younger core players on the board that you can take a chance on. I get that. But outside of that, I mean, if you're competing, I think he's a great pickup and a guy that you can wait pretty late on in your rookie drafts and startups, not rookie drafts, in your startups. All right, so let's take another swing here. We got two more players. If you guys are here, give us a thumbs up on the show. Greatly appreciate it. And as always, if you have questions, we'll continue to answer them while we're still here live at the 48-minute mark, probably about 10, 15 minutes left. Next player we're going to talk about is one of Anthony's guys. So I'm going to go to Anthony first. It's Najee Harris, who finds himself in a pretty nice situation going to the Los Angeles Chargers. He is up a full 2 rounds as well, soaring up the startup charts right now, going from the 11-12 to the 9-12, up a full 2 rounds in the last few weeks. And 26 years old, just signed a 1-year deal. Finds himself with the Los Angeles Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. Anthony, what are your thoughts? I mean, about Najee Harris and this move, and what does it mean for Dynasty? And is he a guy you would be targeting right now?
Yeah, I think I took Najee in our startup. I've been taking him in best ball. I'm taking Najee everywhere. I'm a Najee Harris guy. And if we go back to his rookie year, it was a ton of volume. He was a top 6 running back in points per game, and he's regressed every year since. And I think it's less on Najee, more on his situation in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, since Najee has been there, they've never really had a big threat at quarterback, a threat at a passing game. The metric that jumps off the page at me is average defenders in the box. He's usually a top 5 guy in that category. Last year, 6.7, 5th most, 9th in stat front carry rate. When Najee's on the field, the defense knows he's getting the football one way or another. But the good thing about Najee, you can give him 300-plus touches a year. He has never missed an NFL game. And he's still a good, outside of the yards per carry, the yards per touch. If you look at some of the other metrics, 9th in evaded tackles, 11th in breakaway runs, 12th in yards created. Once he gets to that next level, he can make plays. So I love this landing spot. He's going to go to a Chargers offensive line. They just brought in Becton. They've invested, I think, 2 or 3 first-round picks in this offensive line over the past few years. And he's in an offense, Greg Roman and Harbaugh, they want to run the football, and they want to feature a running back or one running back. Last year, Dobbins, despite all of the injury concerns, he was still at, I believe, top 17 running back at fantasy points per game in PPR. And I think Najee Harris is superior talent and a superior pass catcher out of the backfield. Rest of these running backs here, I mean, what really do they have to combat Najee Harris for touches? Hassan Haskins, Vidal, Jarrett Patterson. And I do think this team has other needs defensively where I don't think they spend a high pick on a running back. They need a wide receiver. Right now, Mike Williams is penciled in as a starter in 3 wide sets, who they just brought back. So I'm all in on Najee Harris and this landing spot.
Yeah, I think you make some good points there. Matt, I'm going to get your thoughts here, but I do want to also ask you, Matt. I mean, when looking at the board, running backs going around Najee Harris in startups, Isaiah Pacheco, Zach Charbonnet, Brian Robinson Jr., Travis Etienne, James Conner, keep those names in mind as you're going to give your take here. But those are some of the guys that you are looking at on the board. And Najee is a guy that, to me, sticks out. What about you? Where do you value him, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of torn because I see 100% of what Anthony, just said. He's never missed a game. They went out and signed him. They've never really had a guy like that in the last few years in the Chargers offense. So I think it's a good fit, and he's certainly going to play. But what I do know is that Harbaugh is going to split the workload. We saw Edwards and Dobbins share the load last year. So I expect that they're going to have somebody else running with Najee. You rattled off the names of Vidal, Patterson, Hassan Haskins, a former Michigan man, which Harbaugh loves, but we know what they are. We've seen them all play out. What I think the more likely scenario is a possible late second-day pick or a third-day pick gets spent on a running back, and I believe that person's going to have a running mate for Najee. Now, the question is, how much are they going to be used? And I don't know. I think it depends on the name. Where he's being drafted right now at, what did you say, the 9-12?
Yep.
I mean, if you're getting a running back, it's pretty good because you're talking about, after him, it's Pacheco, Charbonnet, Brian Robinson, Trey Benson, and I'd much rather have Najee over all those guys. But the names before him, I think I'd almost rather have over him, like Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, and James Conner and Travis Etienne are kind of on that cusp there. So you kind of run the risk of I know he's going to be used this year and he's going to have value, but it's a 1-year contract in LA. So I'm not sure, they could really give him the workload and draft all defense, like Anthony said, and he's going to have a ton of tread on those tires. We've never seen him miss a game, so maybe this is the year that kind of starts. But I think his ADP is appropriately placed, but I just think you need to know the concerns of having Najee, that there is a chance somebody else gets brought in. And we just don't get to know that until the draft happens.
Yeah, I think you both bring up good points. I look for insulation as much as possible, right? There's not always a ton of insulation with running backs unless they're drafted recently and they're high draft picks, right? And high capital is invested in them. A guy like Trey Benson sticks off the board for me of the guys looking around. Najee Harris, Benson, right behind a guy that's getting older in age, and James Conner. And I do think that they want to get him involved this year. This is the 1 year where, depending on James Conner's ADP and redraft, this might be the year I finally start to avoid him. I was very high on him last year. But, when you look at Travis Etienne and Najee Harris, right, similar situations, except Etienne is still with his team. But how much insulation is there, right? New coaching staff. Is he going to get moved? Or does this team fall in love with Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby isn't the guy, right? I mean, we're all so quick to assume that Tank Bigsby is going to take this role, but this is a new coaching staff, right? It is a new system coming in. Like, there is a world. So, I think I'd rather Travis Etienne over Najee Harris in that sense. I think the concern for me for Najee is it's a 1-year deal. Where does he go after this, right? If I'm competing, 100%. Give me Najee Harris. If I know my team is competing, I'm comfortable taking Najee Harris if I'm in a startup because I know he's going to have a good year. I feel confident in that. Even if they do bring somebody in, I feel good enough that I think Najee will have a good year, but the future behind him is uncertain because this team only signed to a 1-year, $5 million deal. Unless Harbaugh falls in love with him, the chances of him coming back aren't very high because we've just seen this with running back. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Anthony, did you want to give anything else in the argument for him, or are you ready to move on?
No, we can move on.
Okay.
Did you guys see? I'm looking at the Chargers depth chart. When did they sign Tyler Conklin? I feel like
they signed him yesterday or 2 days ago. Yeah. It was pretty recent. Yeah,
solid landing spot.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, we talk about veteran tight ends like. Conklin would be a guy I wouldn't mind taking a chance on, but at the same time, people will argue there's a lot of really good tight ends in this draft class, so you'd rather take a swing on a tight end with a 3rd-round rookie pick. So interesting spot for him for sure, and I don't think that rules out the Chargers for bringing in Loveland, who's a Michigan guy with Jim Harbaugh. So
I think if Loveland's on the block, he's the pick. Sorry, throw that out there.
No, you're good. You're good. I kind of agree with you there too. All right, last guy, and then we will wrap up. Again, if you have questions, let us know in the comments below. But Jonathan Taylor, right? This is an interesting guy when we talk about foundational pieces, and he's a perfect example of like how the running back landscape changes so quickly in fantasy football, especially in Dynasty. This is a guy who's now valued at the RB7. That's also not including that Ashton Genty, the 101, is valued ahead of him. So really looking at the 108, and if the 102 is a running back as well, he's close to the 103. We'll call it the 108 right now, but this is a running back that was seen as a foundational piece in Dynasty fantasy football, right? A lot has changed. He had the back injury, right? Had some injuries he's gone through, just hasn't really hit that value, and then had a really slow start last year. Came on a little bit towards the end of the year. He's going around guys like T. Higgins, Rashee Rice, a lot of good quarterbacks, Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and he's sandwiched in between the 102 and 103. It really depends, but I'm going to go to Matt first. Matt, 102, 103. If you can get the 102 for Jonathan Taylor, are you trading him for the 102 at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be interested in it. I just don't think that that's true market value. So I don't think that's going to happen. I traded Jonathan Taylor on 3 teams this offseason, and all 3 of them were the 105, the 107, and the 108.
Sure.
So I don't think you're going to get as high as the 102. Now, if you can, do it. But, I don't think that means that you should just sell Jonathan Taylor. Those are all circumstantial teams for me, and team roster dependent. I think Taylor's a foundational piece for your roster. You can absolutely have him as one of your top running backs. It's a little bit dicier to me if he's your RB1, and it's kind of shaky after that. But if he's your RB2, now we're talking about a really good team that can go and compete and win some championships. So, maybe you are that guy that took Saquon earlier in the second or late in the second round, and you come back and you get Jonathan Taylor in the 4th. That's a really good running back room. You don't have to worry about anything. There's just plug and play guys. So I think I'm comfortable with his ADP. But I think the picks between him, the 102, the 103, those are just unrealistic in my experience.
Sure. So ADP wise, forgot to mention he has moved from the 407 to the 49. So not a ton of movement there. 26 years old. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wouldn't give the 2 or the 3 for Jonathan Taylor either. And I'm fine with the ADP as well. He had a pretty good year, all things considered. Only 14 games played, still running back 7 points per game. A lot of that production came down the stretch late in the year. But he's only 26, right? We were just talking about earlier in the show how these aging running backs are still thriving. I can see that happen for Jonathan Taylor, where we're not looking at a 2-year rental. You can draft Jonathan Taylor and probably still get 4 good years out of him. As long as this Colts offensive line, they can get on track, they can get healthy. I think this offense is going to continue to run through him. It would certainly help if Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, if one of these quarterback hits and both are mobile, they can help Jonathan Taylor out. So I am 100% fine building a roster around Jonathan Taylor, even if it was my running back 1. And in the first few rounds, I bolstered up other parts of my roster, then I'd be willing to take Jonathan Taylor as my RB1.
Yeah. I think you both make good points. I think Taylor is definitely fair value. I guess 2 things. One, when looking at where he's at, he's much closer to the 103 than the 102, at least per Dynasty Data Lab in startups, right? I mean, when you're going out there and you're making trades with people, right? The market value is usually not what you're going to get, right? So it really does depend. But I think when looking at guys, I'd rather have Taylor over Kyron Williams, who's the next running back on the board behind him, James Cook and Josh Jacobs. You could make an argument to me maybe for Josh Jacobs over Jonathan Taylor, and maybe I just punt that round, take a quarterback in a super flex, or even take the 103 if you're in a startup, take the 103, and then go after Josh Jacobs on the way back, who had an awesome year last year as well, and showed us that he can handle a heavy workload, and caught the football a decent amount, which was one of the knocks on him last year. So I think to me, I don't mind the cost of Taylor, but I feel like for what's on the board likely around him, I think I would prefer to go take a swing on a guy like Jacobs, who you're getting a full round behind him. And I'd rather take a quarterback there or a cornerstone wide receiver like T. Higgins, or if AJ Brown does happen to fall. So that would be my strategy. But that's pretty much it for us, guys. That's Greg said it himself. Matt's a great addition. Like the contrasting takes from all. We'll probably keep Matt around. He's pretty solid. But Anthony,
Thanks,
Matt, anything you guys want to say before we close out?
Matt?
Jaden Daniels is going to be the MVP. That's all I got.
Okay.
No, look forward to doing these ADP shows. These are always my favorite to do, every season.
Yeah,
So
I
we'll be
agree.
doing these weekly.
Yeah, we're gonna start doing these weekly. I don't know what day of the week. It might change depending. We might not do it on the same day just because of differing schedules. I don't know when we're gonna do it next week. It might not be me here. Anthony and Matt might do it because I am getting married next week. But we will see you guys sometime this week. Anthony likely going live tomorrow. Maybe Hoff joining him as well. But until next time, we will see you guys then.